Howdy, folks. I've been away for a while. I was on a trip to Florida for about a week. I got to spend some time with some close friends down in Orlando. Got to go see Universal Studios there. I had never been to Florida before. Had a really great time for about a week. Immediately after getting back, I had to jump back into work and had to deal with all of the things that have to do with recovering from a vacation, buying groceries, doing laundry, making food. My son caught a little bit of a virus when we got back, so I had to take care of him. Plus, now that the weather's getting nicer, I had to get my irrigation system turned on and mow the lawn and all kinds of other things. So it's delayed my ability to read an additional chapter for a while. But I'm back now. Looking forward to diving into chapter 6. I've missed hearing from you all. I hope you guys all had a great week, but let's dive straight into the next chapter. The waving alien tree shied back like some sort of huge tentacles from the landing area, and with the barest of bumps, Han set the Millennium Falcon down on the uneven ground. Well, here we are, he announced to no one in particular. Emissary, fur and moving plants a specialty. None of that, Leia warned him, unstrapping from the seat behind him and running through the Jedi relaxation techniques Luke had taught her. Political dealings with people she knew were relatively easy for her. Diplomatic missions with unfamiliar alien races were something else entirely. You'll do fine, Luke said from beside her, reaching over to squeeze her arm. Han half turned. I wish you two wouldn't do that, he complained. It's like listening to half a conversation. Sorry, Luke apologized, climbing out of his seat and stooping to peer out the Falcon's nose window. Looks like our reception committee coming. I'll go get 3PO ready. We'll be there in a minute, Leia called after him. You ready, Han? Yeah, Han told her, adjusting his blaster in its holster. Last chance to change your mind, Chewie. Leia strained her ears as Chewbacca growled out a curt reply. Even after all these years, she still couldn't understand him nearly as well as Han could. Some subtle level of harmonics in the Wookiee's voice, apparently, that she had trouble picking up. But if some of the words were less than distinct, the overall meaning came through crystal clear. Ah, come on, Han urged. You've been fawned over before. Remember that big awards thing back at the Yavin base? I didn't hear you complaining then. It's all right, Han, Leia put in over Chewbacca's response. If he wants to stay aboard with R2 and work on the stabilizers, that's fine. The Bims won't be offended. Han looked out the nose window at the approaching delegation. I wasn't worried about offending them, he muttered. I just thought it'd be nice to have a little extra backup along, just in case. Leia smiled and patted his arm. The Bims are very friendly people, she assured him. There won't be any trouble. I've heard that before, Han said dryly, pulling a comlink from a small storage compartment beside his seat. He started to clip it to his belt, changed directions in mid-motion, and fastened it to his collar instead. Looks good there, Leia said. Are you going to put your old general's insignia on your belt now? He made a face at her. Very funny. With the comlink here, all I have to do is casually switch it on and I'll be able to talk to Chewie without being obvious about it. Ah, Leia nodded. It was a good idea at that. Sounds like you've been spending too much time with Lieutenant Page and his commandos. I've been spending too much time sitting on council meetings, he countered, sliding out of his seat and standing up. After 4 years of political infighting, you learn the occasional value of subtlety. Come on, Chewie. We'll need you to lock up behind us. Luke and 3PO were waiting when they got to the hatchway. Ready? Luke asked. Ready, Leia said, taking a deep breath. With a hiss of released air seal, the hatchway opened, and together they walked down the ramp to where the yellow-clad, half-furred creatures waited. The arrival ceremony was short, and for the most part, unintelligible, though 3PO did his best to keep up a running translation of the five-part harmony the whole thing seemed to have been written in. The song/welcome ended, and two of the Bims stepped forward, one of them continuing the melody while the others held up a small electronic device. He offers greetings to distinguished visitor Counselor Leia Organa Solo, 3PO said, and hopes your discussions with the law elders will be fruitful. He also requests that Captain Solo return his weapon to the ship. The droid said it so matter of factly that it took a second for the words to penetrate. What was that last? Leia asked. Captain Solo must leave his weapon aboard the ship, 3PO repeated. Weapons of violence are not permitted within the city. There are no exceptions. Terrific, Han murmured into her ear. You didn't tell me this one was coming. I didn't know this one was coming, Leia countered quietly, giving the two Bims a reassuring smile. Doesn't look like we've got any choice. Diplomacy, Han growled, making a curse out of the word. Unfastening his gun belt, he wrapped it carefully around the holstered blaster and set the package up inside the hatchway. Happy? Aren't I always? Leia nodded to 3PO. Tell them we're ready. The droid translated. Stepping aside, the two Bims gestured back the way they'd come. They were perhaps 20 meters from the Falcon, with the sounds of Chewbacca sealing the hatchway coming from behind them, when something abruptly occurred to Leia. Luke? She murmured. Yes, I know, he murmured back. Maybe they figure it's just part of the proper Jedi's outfit. Or else their weapons detector doesn't read lightsabers, Han put in quietly from Leia's other side. Either way, what they don't know won't hurt 'em. I hope so, Leia said, forcing down her reflexive diplomatic misgivings. After all, if the Bims themselves hadn't objected to it. Good skies, would you look at that crowd? They were waiting where the path exited the trees. Hundreds of Bims, standing perhaps 20 deep on both sides of the way, all clothed in the same tooled yellow. The official reception committee shifted to single file and started down the gauntlet without giving the crowd a second glance. Bracing herself, Leia followed. It was a little strange, but not nearly as uncomfortable as she'd feared it would be. Each Bim reached out a hand as she passed, touching her with a feathery lightness on shoulder or head or arm or back. It was all done in complete silence and complete order, with the aura of perfect civilization about it. Still, she was glad that Chewbacca had decided not to come. He hated, rather violently, being pawed by strangers. They passed through the crowd, and the Bim walking nearest Leia sang something. He says the Tower of Law is just ahead, 3PO translated. It's the location of their planetary council. Leia peered over the heads of the leading Bims. There, obviously, was the Tower of Law, and next to it, 3PO. Ask what that thing is beside it, she instructed the droid. That building that looks like a three-level dome with the sides and most of the roof cut away. The droid sang, and the Bim replied. It's the city's main marketplace, 3PO told her. He says they prefer the open air whenever possible. That roof probably stretches to cover more of the dome framework when the weather's bad, Han added from behind her. I've seen that design in a few other places. He says that perhaps you can be given a tour of the facility before you leave, 3PO added. Sounds great, Han said. Wonderful place to pick up souvenirs. Quiet, Leia warned, or you can wait in the Falcon with Chewie. The Bimasari Tower of Law was fairly modest as planetary council meeting places went, topping the three-level marketplace beside it by only a couple of floors. Inside, they were led to a large room on the ground floor where, framed by huge tapestries covering the walls, another group of Bims waited. Three of them stood and sang as Leia entered. They add their greetings to those given to you at the landing area, Princess Leia, 3PO translated. They apologize, however, for the fact that the talks will not be able to begin quite yet. It appears that their chief negotiator became ill just moments ago. Oh, Leia said, taken slightly aback. Please express our sympathies and ask if there's anything we can do to help. They thank you, 3PO said after another exchange of songs, but they assure you that that will not be necessary. There is no danger to him, merely inconvenience. The droid hesitated. I really don't think that you should inquire further, Your Highness, he added a bit delicately. The complaint appears to be of a rather personal nature. I understand, Leia said gravely, suppressing a smile at the prim tone of the droid's voice. Well, in that case, I suppose we might as well return to the Falcon until he feels ready to continue. The droid translated, and one of their escorts stepped forward and sang something in reply. He offers an alternative, Your Highness, that he would be eager to conduct you on a tour of the marketplace while you wait. Leia glanced at Han and Luke. Any objections? The Bim sang something else. He further suggests that Master Luke and Captain Solo might find something to interest them in the tower's upper chambers, 3PO said. Apparently, there are relics there dating from the middle era of the Old Republic. A quiet alarm went off in the back of Leia's mind. Were the Bims trying to split them up? Luke and Han might like the market too, she said cautiously. There was another exchange of arias. He says they would find it excessively dull, 3PO told her. Frankly, if it's anything like marketplaces I've seen. I like marketplaces, Han cut him off brusquely, his voice dark with suspicion. I like 'em a lot. Leia looked at her brother. What do you think? Luke's eyes swept the Bims, measuring them, she knew, with all of his Jedi insight. I don't see what danger they could be, he said slowly. I don't sense any real duplicity in them. Nothing beyond that of normal politics, anyway. Leia nodded, her tension easing a little. Normal politics. Yes, that was probably all it was. The Bim probably just wanted the chance to privately bend her ear on behalf of his particular viewpoint before the talks got started in earnest. In that case, she said, inclining her head to the Bim, we accept. The marketplace has been in this same spot for over 200 years, 3PO translated as Han and Leia followed their host up the gentle ramp between the second and third levels of the open dome structure. Though not in this exact form, of course. The Tower of Law, in fact, was built here precisely because it was already a common crossroads. Hasn't changed much, has it? Han commented, pressing close to Leia to keep them from getting run down by a particularly determined batch of shoppers. He'd seen a lot of marketplaces on a lot of different planets, but seldom one so crowded. Crowded with more than just locals, too. Scattered throughout the sea of yellow-clad Bims. Will they ever wear any other color? He could see several other humans, a pair of Baratas, an Ishitib, a group of Yazumi, and something that looked vaguely like a Payanid. You can see why this place is worth getting into the New Republic, Leia murmured to him. I guess so, Han conceded, stepping to one of the booths and looking at the metalware displayed there. The owner-operator sang something towards him, gesturing to a set of carving knives. No thanks, Han told him, moving back. The Bim continued to jabber at him, his gestures becoming sharper. 3PO, will you have our host tell him that we're not interested? He called to the droid. There was no response. 3PO? He repeated, looking around. 3PO was staring off into the crowd. Hey, Goldenrod, he snapped. I'm talking to you. 3PO spun back. I'm terribly sorry, Captain Solo, he apologized, but our hosts seem to have disappeared. What do you mean, disappeared? Han demanded, looking around. Their particular Bim, he remembered, had worn a set of shiny pins on his shoulders. Pins that were nowhere to be seen. How could he just disappear? Beside him, Leia gripped his hand. I've got a bad feeling about this, she said tightly. Let's get back to the tower. Yeah, Han agreed. Come on, 3PO. Don't get lost. Shifting his grip on Leia's hand, he turned and froze. A few meters away, islands in the churning sea of yellow, 3 aliens stood facing them. Short aliens, not much taller than the Bims, with steel gray skin, large dark eyes, and protruding jaws. And held ready in their hands, Stockley sticks. We've got trouble, he murmured to Leia, turning his head slowly to look around, hoping desperately that those 3 were all there were. They weren't. There were at least 8 more, arrayed in a rough circle 10 meters across. A circle with Han, Leia, and 3PO at its center. Han, Leia said urgently. I see them, he muttered. We're in trouble, sweetheart. He sensed her glance behind them. Who are they? She breathed. I don't know. Never seen anything like 'em before. But they're not kidding around. Those things are called Stockley sticks. Shoot a spray net mist 200 meters with enough shock stun juice to take down a good-sized Gundark. Abruptly, Han noticed that he and Leia had moved, instinctively backing away from the nearest part of the alien circle. He glanced over his shoulder. They're herding us towards the down ramp, he told her. Must be trying to take us without stirring up the crowd. We're doomed, 3PO moaned. Leia gripped Han's hand. What are we going to do? Let's see how closely they're paying attention. Trying to watch all the aliens at once, Han casually reached his free hand towards the comlink attached to his collar. The nearest alien lifted his Stockley stick warningly. Han froze, slowly lowered the hand again. So much for that idea, he muttered. I think it's time to pull in the welcome mat. Better give Luke a shout. He can't help us. Han glanced down at her glazed eyes and pinched face. Why not? He demanded, stomach tightening. She sighed, just audibly. They've got him too. And that's the end of the chapter. Anyway, no real insights on this particular chapter, but I am happy to be back. I hope you guys all had a great week, and we'll talk to you again real soon.